You're listening to a podcast of Spurious Morality. Hello and welcome to a podcast of Spurious Morality. I'm Johnston, and with me this week I have Greg.
Vroom,
And I have Jimmy.
Can't we just have the edited highlights?
And season by season has reached the trial of a Time Lord. We're on to the longest Doctor Who story there is. It's a whole season long, and for the sake of common sense, reason, the fact that it basically is take your pick, we're breaking it down into its 4 different parts. So we are going to treat it as the Mysterious Planet, Mind Warp, Terror of the Vervoids, and the Ultimate Foe. I'm aware that this is probably going to annoy somebody online somewhere who's got other names for the stories, and it's basically the beginning of the Hartnell era all over again. Different stories, different names, etc. Anyway, so before we get going and dive into each of the 4 segments, I'm going to ask you which one's your favourite. Do you want to go first, Greg?
Sure. I suppose, honestly, I think it's the first one. I think it's Mysterious Planet. I personally, I feel like the quality of the season just progressively goes down. But yeah, it's the last like full Robert Holmes story we have. It's got all of his usual hallmarks, and it's got a good mystery at the heart of it.
It is a little bit Robert Holmes paint by numbers, but it is good. I do think it's it's a bit misunderstood. It's a bit unfairly maligned, I think, Mysterious Planet. What about you, Jimmy?
For me, I've definitely got to go Terror of the Vervoids. It's my favourite part of the season, and if you cut out the trial stuff and watch the special edition, it's probably my favourite 6th Doctor TV story overall. So yeah, Terror of the Vervoids for me.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. I quite like Vervoids. I think it's sort of a very good story, and I like that it kind of gives us a glimpse of part of the 6th Doctor's era that we never actually got to see on television because of what happened next, apart from this, like the 6th Doctor in the future, where he has chilled out a bit and dresses a bit differently, and he's with Mel now. And it's almost like it's teasing an era that we never actually get outside of those 4 episodes. But yeah, I think it's really good. I think the Vervoids are sort of an excellent evil species, and I quite like the fact that there's sort of Agatha Christie stuff going on as well, trying to sniff out a murderer. So yeah, it's a mixed bag this season. I'm gonna, before we dive in, I'm gonna actually put it out there. I like this season more than most. I think there's a lot to enjoy in Trial. I think you just have to take it out of context of what it is. It's an odd season. It's a really odd direction to go in when you're you're in trouble as a program. But I've often heard it sort of suggested that Trials should have gone a different way. There are no, right, the Master pops up towards the end, but there are no returning villains in it really, and there's nothing particularly engaging, and the way it deals with Perry isn't great. It's a bit of a slow start with Mysterious Planet. I've heard all of these criticisms thrown at it before, and I sort of think, well, what's the alternative? Do you want a season that has Daleks and Cybermen and the Master and everything else in it? Because that was the last season. That was season 22, and allegedly it's season 22 that's got us into this mess. So yeah, it's I have no real problems with Trial. I just think the context of what was going on at the time kind of jades it a little bit, and it doesn't help that Colin Baker's final on-screen words as the Doctor are carrot juice, carrot juice, carrot juice. But there was no way of knowing that would be the case at the time. So let's go to Mysterious Planet. So this has, as Greg said before, an excellent sort of central mystery to it. It's definitely a Robert Holmes script, and it's automatically elevated by that. I do feel that this one is let down a little bit by direction, though. I think it's very rare that direction actually lets a Doctor Who story down. I think cases where it has previously have been sort of fairly extreme examples. I'm looking at Warriors of the Deep, I'm looking at Time Lash, that kind of thing. Whereas I think here it's all just a bit bland. They switched to using like outdoor broadcasting equipment as opposed to film for the location stuff, and it makes the location look a bit unexciting. I mean, it is anyway. It's sort of a medieval style village and a woodland. But it is exciting to make places like that look good, and Mysterious Planet just doesn't do it. And then underground, the studio stuff, it's all the usual overlit white corridors, that kind of thing. So visually, this one is not a winner. However, there's some cracking dialogue in there, some amazing concepts, some real Robert Holmes humour. We get a few good double acts peppered around, and Colin seems to be on quite good comic form. I do like the way that it shows the relationship between the Doctor and Perry has sort of evolved a little bit. They've been travelling together a bit longer. A lot of the antagonism from the previous season has gone now, and they just feel like a couple of friends on an adventure, which is what Doctor Who should be. Drathro is an alright villain, bit forgettable, but worse things have happened in Doctor Who. So yeah, all in all, I quite like Mysterious Planet. It's not the strongest start, and it's probably not the amazing wow that the production team wanted at the time. The first sort of 40 seconds notwithstanding, at least. But it's a good, solid Robert Holmes story, and it's a real shame it was his last one. Greg, what do you think of it then? You said it was your favourite.
I did, and I should point out that it's my favorite, but this is also my least favorite season of the classic series. So we're dealing on a relative scale there. No, but I enjoy Mysterious Planet. I agree with you that the direction is very flat, very static, and the location shooting does just look like they're running around in the woods down the street from the studio. But the script really picks it up. I mean, Glitz is one of the great original characters of the latter years of the show. Um, his relationship with Dibber is hilarious, and it's a shame we don't get to see Dibber again in the show. But yeah, Glitz is a great character. The concept is fantastic. Just the idea of like we're on this planet called Ravalox, and yet why are things in English and so forth, which is I suppose interesting because things are in English on other planets too, and no one says anything. But like it actually draws attention to things like that. It creates this mystery, and then like the revelation that, oh no, this is actually Earth, and something moved it out here. Um, Later in Trial, when we find out it's the Time Lords, that's a cool revelation. But what I like here is how they they censor the characters, like, because we're watching it through we're watching it through the perspective of the trial. So, when Glitz is talking about the sleepers and all that, we get things that are bleeped out. And I mean, it's a little thing, but it's used to good effect here, and it adds to the overall mystery of the season. Um, I I don't have a problem with the giant robot, really. I mean, it's a little silly looking, but as the idea of a programmed intelligence that is fanatically devoted to accomplishing what it believes to be its purpose and isn't really concerned about anything else is good sci-fi stuff. And yeah, I think also like this shows a completely different side to the Sixth Doctor and Perry. Like they're nowhere near as antagonistic as they were before. And I know you said that like Terror of the Vervoids gives you a glimpse into a Sixth Doctor era that we never really got. I think this does too. I think that if this had been the Sixth Doctor's relationship with Perry in season 22, I don't know if we get to the point of needing to campaign for the show's future or not. But in any case, yeah, it's a good opening. It's well written. The direction is meh, but there's some good characters. Like it's a fun Doctor Who story, and it's a good start to the season.
Yeah, it's a real shame, as you were saying, that Dibber never reappears because he's actually just as good a character as Glitz. Glitz is maybe the sort of more memorable of the two, but Dibber has some absolutely fantastic lines. The bit where the two of them are trying to trick Drathro into sort of heading out to their ship, and like, oh, we've got loads of black light in the ship. Like, yeah, sometimes you can't see where you're going. It's brilliant stuff. It's really good. Okay, Jimmy, talk to us about the mysterious planet.
Well, first thing I'll say is I hadn't actually put this in my notes, but when you were talking about it being a Robert Holmes one, it just made me realize, hang on a minute, you've got those two young scientists that got sent through to him. He's redoing the Crotons. They're sending the intelligent ones off to work with robots, supposedly, but it's, yeah, just interesting to think that he's calling back to his first story in his last story. What else? The opening model is great. The trial station, they did a really brilliant job there, and it's so good. Also on the trial front, and this applies to all four stories, not just to the three before they go into the anyway. The Inquisitor just seems to go from bias towards the Valeyard to bias towards the Doctor to genuinely neutral from scene to scene. It's really weird. Like I don't know what they were going for there. But yeah, as you say, the Sixth Doctor and Perry finally getting along is brilliant, but it's far, far too late. I like their dynamic here, but it's a shame we couldn't have got something like that sooner. And the scene where Perry cuts off the Doctor from being about to name himself was a bit cheesy and a bit obvious, but it's pretty good story. Like I'd definitely put it second behind Terror of the Vervoids for the season. I did like the bit where Dibber and Glitz have that conversation about, oh, what's philanthropist? Oh, they're stupid. Yeah, you do look like one then. That was pretty good. They do have a good dynamic, and yeah, it's a pity Dibber didn't come back with Glitz. There's one bit where it's a bit odd where the Doctor's saying that Perry has an evil streak, and it's a bit creepy when you think that he nearly strangled her for being evil in his first story. Supposedly, it's a bit why did they put that in? It's sort of they've had this, oh, now they're getting along dynamic, and then they just have that weird little bit there. It doesn't really fit, but yeah, I like it overall. It's a good one, but definitely not the best for me.
I think it's solid enough. I think in any other season, it is probably one of the weaker stories, or most of the seasons, it's one of the weaker stories. But it sort of it does stand out here, and it shows that even at this point, a little bit of Robert Holmes magic really, really does help with Doctor Who. And you're right about the Crotons. You're absolutely right. He's just ripping himself off 20 years later using the same, more or less the same story. Let's move on to Mind Warp then, and I suspect this one might be in for a bit of a kicking from you two. So I'm not going to go in too heavily on it. It's probably my least favourite segment of Trial, which is, it's a shame because Syl is a great villain, and in this, Syl continues to be just as good a villain as he was in Vengeance of Varos. But it's just unpleasant. It's the only way I can sort of describe it. I think that's a huge part of Philip Martin's writing. A lot of it is just unpleasant. I mean, look at the work he did with Big Finish. It's all the weird body horror stuff and all that kind of thing. Yeah, I just can't get on board with it. And the fact that the ending is really unclear, what actually happens to Perry is really unclear, and all that kind of thing. One thing I will say about this one, though, is if Mysterious Planet didn't look particularly good, this looks excellent. It's a very, very 80s story. It looks 80s, it sounds 80s, but it's got an atmosphere. I also think it's notable for its like incidental music. It's pretty unique. There's no other Doctor Who story that sounds like this one, so it definitely gets points for that. Yeah, it's brutal, it's unpleasant, lots and lots of characters end up dead, and I think it's kind of a shame that we don't really get clarity on what happened, particularly the events of the last episode. You know, stuff's been edited in the Matrix, it shows that Perry is killed, but it only shows that Perry is killed. It doesn't go on later on to show that she hasn't been. We're just told she hasn't been. And it's perhaps not the best way of managing that moment. So yeah, it's. I don't particularly know how to feel about this one in a lot of ways, because there's a lot there for me to like. It just seems as though it doesn't quite link it all together in the way I'd want it to, and there's also a lot there to dislike, not on a this is a bad Doctor Who level necessarily, but just on a sort of gross out level, I guess. What about you, Greg?
Yeah, I agree. It's unpleasant in that sense, and I think this, of the 4 parts of Trial, I think this is the one that feels like a season 22 story versus this kind of lighter, more gentle feeling that the rest of this season has. I don't hate Mind Warp because I applaud its ambition. It's the only Doctor Who story from the classic era that really leans into the idea of an unreliable narrator. Like, you don't, the Doctor is constantly challenging, like, the reality of what's being depicted on screen. And I think that that's something that keeps the story compelling. I mean, I don't mind that, you don't have the full picture at the end of it because, of course, it's part of the season arc, but I think, like, the way that it, keeps the audience on the wrong foot is a good idea. Is it executed particularly well? Not necessarily, no. Um, and then, in terms of it as an actual story, like, it's, yeah, I mean, yes, it's Philip Martin, up and down. Uh, you've got Brian Blessed shrieking to the to the heavens in it, which is awesome. I'm sorry. I love your Kanos. Syl is back, and Syl is great, obviously. What I really like about this story is that you see, in this one, you see other mentors, and, like, in Vengeance on Varos, you see Syl with his, like, noises and his kind of disgusting comportment. And you think, oh, this is what mentors must be like. Ugh. And then you see this story, and the rest of them are fairly normal. It's like, no, that's just Syl. Syl is like that. He is weird. I think that's a good unspoken detail about his character. Um, in terms of, this being Perry's final story, I mean, I wish that the ending is confusing, and not in a good way, because, like, you see, the doctor, like, get, sucked back into the TARDIS, and then, like, Yurkanos bursts into the room, and then everything goes slow motion, and then goes to a freeze frame and a fade to white. And then you cut to the trial, and the doctor's like, "Oh, you killed Perry," and it's like, he did? Like, is that what happened? It looked like the Time Lords like intervened into the room or something like that. It's hard, but at the same time, I understand that like they were trying to get away from the violence accusations of the previous season, and they can't show Yurkano's just gunning down a whole room full of people. So, fair enough, but yeah, it doesn't the ending doesn't work nearly as well as it should. And yeah, I mean it's not a bad, horrible story. It's unpleasant, it's kind of uncomfortable. It tries some new things. Like there's a lot to admire about it. Is it one of my favorites? No, absolutely not. But I can never, and I've said this many times before, I can never fault Doctor Who for trying stuff.
Yeah, this one tries stuff. It is ambitious, and I think it's probably fair to say actually more of it lands than doesn't. Which again is very variable throughout Doctor Who. What are your thoughts on it, Jimmy?
Yeah, I've got to be blunt. I hate this one. It just feels such a pointless waste. I mean, the whole, oh, I don't remember that. Oh, no, I'm faking it. No, I'm on the drug just from being zapped. Oh no, this. Oh no, that. And you never get a proper explanation until the cop out at the end of the story as a whole, where it's like, oh no, Kerry actually married that guy. It's just a bit like, if they had eventually revealed, like if they did this story and then they did flashbacks of how it really happened later, then it might have worked. But without that, it just doesn't. It feels like a pointless waste. Nothing you're seeing is what actually happened. You don't find out what actually did happen. It's yeah, it's just pointless. I also didn't like that. Still sort of been redesigned a bit. The costume is not as good as it was in Vengeance on Varos. The costume in Varos looked so much better and more realistic, and this one's just sort of green and plasticky, and it's like how in a single season the production values have gone down so much is like, it's a bit of a shock. It's pretty awful. And then you've got the Inquisitor and the Valyard being like, "Oh, you didn't stop the experiment happening to Perry," as an accusation against the Doctor. And it's like, you took him out of time so that he couldn't stop it, and then you delayed Yurkanos so that he couldn't stop it. And it's like, well, you can't blame the Doctor for failing when you made him fail. It's just stupid. The only two good things I can say about the story is I love the little line Perry has at one stage about Earth having over the top madmen and politicians, and sadly that line hasn't dated it a single bit. And also, Nicola Bryan gives an incredible performance in that brief bit where she's playing Kiv possessing her. It's just, yeah, she really goes for it all out and does a brilliant job. That's probably the one real good thing about the story, is that brief 1 minute where she's playing him. Other than that, it's just, I don't like it at all. Garbage starts finished, and it's just, I don't know what else to say. It's probably my least favorite story of the 80s. It's terrible to me.
And I actually get that. I really do. Like I say, I don't dislike it particularly. It's probably my least favourite of the season, but as I've said, I quite like this season. Um, I we'll pause just very briefly then to have a Perry chat, because if nothing else, Perry did deserve a better exit than this. Sure, it's dramatic, it's memorable, but it's not really her exit. Her exit is the stupid line 6 episodes later, like, oh yeah, she's happy actually, and she's married, and everything we see here is waved off. And I think actually Nicola Bryan wasn't too happy about that. I think she'd actually rather have just been killed at that point. That being said, Big Finish has done post Mind Warp Perry, is still doing post Mind Warp Perry, and I quite like that at the very least. It gives us a chance to reframe the relationship between the Sixth Doctor and Perry again, even more. But this just feels like a little bit of an unsatisfying ending for her. The character definitely, she did evolve, she did change, but it's sort of on a week by week basis as to how much that happened. Sort of we've actually got quite a good, intelligent Perry in The Two Doctors, for example, and then she's whiny and useless in Time Lash, and then she's back to being quite perceptive about things in Revelation of the Daleks. So just as a character, she's yo-yoed all over the place across her time on screen. I guess the big Perry question is always going to be, would she have worked better as a companion if Peter Davison had stuck around and done another series? So if she was predominantly a Fifth Doctor companion as opposed to a Sixth Doctor one? Because I think the character loses an awful lot after 2 stories when Colin Baker turns up. It's not Colin Baker's fault, it's the way the relationship between the 2 characters was written. But yeah, I don't know. Perry just feels like a character that there could have been an awful lot more from, and it's a shame that she got such an abrupt exit that then got retconned out by a pretty crap line of dialogue later on anyway. So is there anything you want to add about Perry, Greg?
I agree with you about she was better with Peter Davison, and I think, I mean, Davison in general had good companions, partially because, his doctor was, like we talked about before, not, the superstar, like, dominating every scene. Like, the companions got a chance to, step forward as well. And they very deliberately went away with that with the Sixth Doctor. And so when Colin Baker's on screen, all eyes are on him, and he's the focal point of the entire series. And Perry is then reduced to just being a reactive character and saying, "What is it, Doctor?" over and over and over again. And I think it really did her a disservice, because, like, you watch Planet of Fire and Caves of Androzani, and you're thinking, like, this is a great, like, companion character. Like, this is, we'll remember her as one of the all-time best. And then season 22, it's like, nah, like, she's so often whiny and silly and weird, and I just, yeah, I don't like it. And honestly, like, I understand why people don't like the way she goes out in Mind Warp. It's needlessly cruel. They should have just, once they committed to that, they should have just stuck with it and not undid it at the end. But I I think the real shame is, like, at the end of Mind Warp, like, when she's playing, the reincarnated Christopher Ryan. She's, like, her acting is phenomenal. Like, it's incredibly good. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, like, why didn't we give her more chances to act? Like, this is great." So, yeah, I think Perry was a missed opportunity as a companion, and yeah, she deserved better.
Yeah, agreed. There was a lot of potential there, and I really struggle to pick apart what it is that kind of ruins that. Was it the regeneration? Was it just general writing? Was it that there was no real direction determined for the character? Like, the previous companion, Turlo, had a little bit of an ongoing arc. It only ever really popped up in 2 stories, but there were mysteries around Turlo, and even when he did become good guy, he wasn't always completely trustworthy and all that kind of thing. And then Perry comes along, and there is this brashness, this sarcasm, and then it just disappears and turns into arguing. Maybe, I think maybe it was the regeneration, but I I much prefer Perry in the 2 stories of this season than anything in season 22. What about you, Jimmy?
I think Perry definitely works better with the Fifth Doctor, especially on TV, but even more so in the audios. I think she really finally got her chance to shine in the Fifth Doctor Perry and Erimem series. The sort of older sister dynamic she had with Erimem, where she's the sort of slightly more experienced traveler who's been around slightly longer, and Erimem's picking things up. I loved their dynamic together. I think it's my favorite Perry sort of era, but yeah, season 22 was just the dynamic between her and the new doctor was terrible, and she was, constantly being abused and harassed, and it's just, yeah, it's a shame that she didn't get better because, yeah, Nicola Bryant's a great actress. She did really well in the Fifth Doctor stuff. She does really well as Kiev. She's brilliant in the audios. And yet, most of her time on the TV series is just her being yelled at and argued with and treated badly. It's a real disappointment. And yeah, she deserved better, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a definite shame, and you're both right. That sort of couple of minutes where she's being possessed by Kiv at the end of Mind Warp, it's just phenomenal. It's actually difficult to believe that it's Nicola Bryant. It's just so well done. That's not a dig at her. That's a compliment on how fantastic the acting and the bald cap is. But yeah. Well, let's move on to Terror of the Vervoids. So it I find this really interesting, this story, purely because of the whole it's giving us a glimpse further down the Sixth Doctor's era. It's using an adventure that will happen to him in the future. Um, and it lets us play with the unreliable narrator thing even more. Like there were hints of it in Mind Warp, whereas in this, we are seeing things that are incorrect. We're seeing things that the Doctor, when reviewing the footage earlier, didn't see. But because it's set in the future and because we only have the Doctor's word for it, it just sort of takes that a little step further. I like the idea that we're all trapped together on a spaceship. It's very, very, very sort of Agatha Christie. We've got, central mystery behind everything. We've got essentially two murderers on the ship. We've got a human one, and then we've got a race of vervoids as well. And it's just like, it really does feel quite intense. It looks interesting, this one. I think we're back to sort of fairly bland sets here, but it's worked with well. They're very, very generic Doctor Who sets, but they are worked with rather quite well, I think. We get the best out of them. There's some pretty good direction in this one. It's not perfect. There are some moments where you just sort of think, oh, for God's sake, really? Sort of making Bonnie Langford scream at the same pitch as the closing cliffhanger sting, for example, at the end of the first part. And but yeah, I think this is good. There's some good casting. Like Honor Blackman is a really good bit of casting, particularly for this era of Doctor Who. And I think it's fair to say, Pip and Jane's best story. I think this is Pip and Jane Baker at their best. They've got a really interesting concept and they run with it. And there's a pretty good murderer B plot going on alongside it as well. The ending's always sort of one of those controversial moments because it does end in a genocide and the Doctor does do the genocide, and actually the sort of unreliable narratory bit for this one, well, actually it seems quite reliable, actually, that is what the Doctor does to defeat the Vervoids. He sees it as a last resort, and but I just feel as though that there's some very interesting ethical implications and questions for the Doctor that don't really get asked properly. And it's also a really, really stupid thing for the Doctor to choose to show because he commits genocide, which isn't the best defense for anything, really, all things considered. The less said about the Vervoid's appearance, the better. And now I will pass over to Greg.
So I agree with you that this is Pip and Jane Baker's best story. That, much like Mysterious Planet being the best, for me, the best story of the worst season, this is the best story by the worst writers to disgrace Doctor Who. So I don't like this. I the describing it as in general terms, like describing the framework of it, it sounds great, right? You've got this cool idea for these for the aliens, the vervoids, like the way that, they're not just like free right from minute one killing people. The fact that, you've got like the Agatha Christie, solving the murder B plot at the same time, like the more direct links to the trial, introducing a new companion, like all of these things, like, just described that way, it sounds great. But then you look at the execution and it's like some of the worst dialogue you're ever going to hear. And I found myself caught up in a web of intrigue, and it's like, what? No one speaks like this. Like, what are you doing? Like, Mel is just utterly obnoxious in this. Like, I like Mel. I love Bonnie Langford, but like, this is the worst possible intro for her. Like, she so multiple times she like describes herself to the camera, and it's like, like, do we not can't we pick this up just from watching her? Like the Agatha Christie thing, yeah, but it's Agatha Christie for preschoolers. Like they they do the neat little, clue with the one Mungarian doesn't turn his translator on, and that's how we know. And then we bring the story to a grinding halt so the doctor could point at the screen and describe exactly what happened and how he's so smart and nobody else could possibly have could notice that. And it's like, I just don't understand like what the appeal here is supposed to be. Like it's just, oh, it's probably it's one of the biggest gulfs between like idea and realization, like, and it's not like a Bob Baker, Dave Martin thing where just the idea couldn't be realized with money. It's like, no, you could easily do this story and make it great, but it's just the script is so bad that it brings everything else down. And yeah, the Vervoids don't look appropriate, shall we say, but I mean, it's, more visually interesting, I guess, than most monsters. I don't I I know people like this one, and I get it, and there's elements of it that are likable, certainly, but it just, and yes, finally, like the doctor using this in his defense is utterly nonsensical. Like he can't be that dumb to think that this is a good thing. And then you're right. Like at the end, it raises like an interesting ethical question. Like, yes, the doctor saved everyone, but in doing so, he exterminated an entire species, a new species, right? And then this is just never engaged with again. Like they bring it up, they accuse him of genocide, and then it's never mentioned again in the final two parts. And so what was the point? Why bring that up? I don't like it. I don't like how this whole thing ends. I'm not going to be very kind to the next one either. No.
The genocide thing is just some of the most stupid story logic in any Doctor Who at all, and that is saying something. It really is. Go on, Jimmy, you have a go.
Yeah, I definitely agree about the Doctor using as evidence a story where he commits genocide is stupid. And for me, the thing with Terror of the Vervoids is that mostly it is the trial stuff that is silly. I mean, the way they have to go into the great detail about how he realized the Megarian wasn't a Megarian and the genocide charge. But on the other hand, they don't. I don't think it's as interfered with as say Mind Wolf. Like it's very clear cut when you watch the special edition of Terror of the Vervoids by itself. Pretty much the only faked bit was the Doctor smashing up the radio equipment and one bit where he's a bit dismissive of Mel, and that's about it. Like most of the story seems to be, yeah, this is how it actually happened. And for me, that's why it works. Like it's definitely the best segment of Trial as a part of Trial, but for me, it's at its best on its own. I really enjoy it as a standalone thing, and it's nice to get a Mel story with the Sixth Doctor because for me, even though I prefer the Seventh Doctor to the Sixth, and Mel travelled with both of them, I prefer her dynamic with Six to her dynamic with Seven, and so it's nice that we did get one story on telly of the two of them together. And yeah, I enjoy it. Like, yes, some things are a bit silly or a bit obvious, or the writing's a bit over the top, but it's just fun. The Sixth Doctor is so much better than he usually is on TV. Like, this is all after all the audio's in between Perry and Mel, and you've got like this is all 60 from the audios, but on telly and still sounding like it did in the 80s. It's brilliant. And Mel is such a good character. I mean, she's very obviously thinly sketched, and you don't get much, of like, oh, I'm as boring as they come or whatever. But Bonnie Langford does a good job with it. Like, Mel just is so likable, and it's especially after coming of after the previous season and the whole season, Perry's basically being tortured and treated badly, and you wonder why she sticks with it. Whereas you get Mel, and it's like, oh yeah, she's having fun, she's enjoying herself. It's such an improvement just getting that dynamic. And the other things that I liked were the way the Doctor was so um, understanding about the way the Vervoids worked. Like, he's like, oh, they've got their pile of bodies, but you've got a compost heap and that. And it's good to get that sort of slightly more alien Doctor where it's like he's not just acting like a normal human. He can see the perspective of this entirely different species that works a different way. And I mean, sure, he does end up killing them all anyway, but it's interesting to see that he can see that dynamic. And I also loved the line from Professor Lasky at one part about when the Doctor's criticizing her about creating vervoids, and she has that line about, oh, when early man discovered fire, I bet some people wanted it suppressed too. And it's a lovely callback to the very first story, back to the unearthly child, back to the caveman stuff. Because yeah, that did happen. That's something we've seen before, and it's just a nice little throwaway reference, but it really shone for me. So yeah, I love this one. It's so good, so much. Easily the best Sixth Doctor story, I think, on telly.
It's just dawned on me. I don't think I've ever actually watched the special edition. I need to get onto that, make the effort to, because I can genuinely see it working really, really well.
I think the only things that didn't work for me with the special edition was there was two things. First of all, I think they should have made it movie format, because once you cut the trial stuff, the episode lengths are very uneven. Like, they should have just made it movie format, like some of the season 26 special editions. And other thing is they give it a new title sequence, and it's just really weird and over the top. They should have used the actual Sixth Doctor title sequence. And also, the only other thing is at the start, when you zoom in on the Hyperion from outside and you see them all through, like, presumably a window, they actually CGI'd on a window so that it's a bit blurry, and it just looks a bit silly. It's the year 3000 milli, and, you can have a window that's perfectly see-through. You don't need to CGI glass on there, but other than those three little things, I love the special edition, and I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't watched it.
That might be my post-podcast recording homework. Go and watch the special edition of Vervoids. Yeah, I like this one. I'm aware it's not perfect. I'm aware it's full of faults, and there's nothing that Greg has said that I can particularly disagree with. But despite all of that, I do really like this story. I think it's, if nothing else, it's an insight into an era that I really, really wish we'd actually have had.
I actually just realized there is one thing I forgot to mention that is also a bit silly. It's that for the whole first two segments of the trial, the Inquisitor and the Valiant are both insistent that the Matrix can't be edited. How dare you say the Matrix could be edited? Of course, the Matrix can't be wrong. And yet, halfway through Terror of the Vervoids, when they're doing that scene about the Mogarian, that's like, oh, well, we didn't see what happened. You must have edited the Matrix. And it's like, you spent the whole story saying that's impossible. Why are you suddenly accusing the Doctor of doing it? You're sort of throwing your own case away.
To be honest, I think there are a lot of inconsistencies in the trial scenes. Like, it's kind of its own story, and I quite like it. It's an interesting sort of. It is an interesting format. I don't think it's actually particularly right for this, but it is an interesting format. But I don't. How were the trial scenes crafted? Like, was it just whoever's writing the episode also wrote the trial scenes that went in? Is that where the inconsistency comes from? Like, should that not have been something that was dealt with by the script editor? But then again, the script editor wasn't having the best time while doing the. I don't know. That is a source of frustration. Let's go then to the ultimate foe, which is the amazing series finale. Like, all of the questions that you wanted to be answered are mostly left unanswered, to be honest, and a load more are set up. But, cool, whatever. I'm an absolute sucker for The Matrix, so I like the fact that we go back into The Matrix. I like the fact that it's so heavily inspired by The Deadly Assassin, and Robert Holmes really was just sort of playing a game of greatest hits here. It's such a shame he never got to complete it. I think actually part 13 of Trial it's actually very, very good. I suspect it's actually more Eric Saywood than it is Robert Holmes, but I think that actually is on record. But Saywood's doing a very, very good job of emulating Robert Holmes, and to be honest, I think that's kind of what he was always wanting to do. I've long held this theory that Saywood just wanted to be like Robert Holmes, and I think gradually as he went through Doctor Who, he actually did get more and more like Robert Holmes as he went along, but there is only one Robert Holmes, and unfortunately he wasn't able to contribute an awful lot here. Then there was a load of behind-the-scenes nonsense, and then Pip and Jane ended up writing the final episode, and yeah, megabyte modem, that's all I'm going to say. Again, I like this one. It's fun. It's got some good ideas. Glitz coming back's good. The Master turns up and doesn't really do much, but it's good to have him there. I'm quite happy for them to just kind of use a couple of episodes of Anthony Ainley that they've got contracted up here in the way that they do. There's no harm done. It doesn't really add to the threat too much because we're in more comedy master mode than we are evil master mode. De Valliard is the villain, which it's just so surprising. Like, nobody saw this coming at all. Like, the evil cackling over the top bloke dressed entirely in black for the last 12 weeks is actually the bad guy. Like, heaven forfend. It doesn't really do anything satisfactorily, but it's a hell of a ride, and I'm just happy to sort of sit back, switch my brain off, and let the ultimate foe happen. Like I say, it gets points for The Matrix. It gets points for some of the absolutely great imagery that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And ultimately, it just, to be honest, it leaves me wanting more. Like, the final couple of episodes of Trial actually leave me wanting more. There is so much interesting stuff going on that we are told about or that we are teased about. Like, the High Council on Gallifrey has been overthrown. Gallifrey is in political crisis. I'm like, okay, great. Can we have a look at that? That sounds interesting. And then at the end of it, everything wraps up and he's done. Oh, no, wait. The Valliard, who is actually an evil version of the Doctor, is still alive. He has not been defeated. And it honestly feels like it's setting up for a pretty massive sequel. And then the actual sequel is Time and the Rani. Yeah, I don't know. I really, really actually wish what's going on here was followed up on a lot more, and it's partly because it's left pretty unsatisfactorily, but also because there's some really exciting stuff hinted at. I know there's a book that goes into the stuff on Gallifrey. I think it's The Eight Doctors. Obviously, the Valliard has popped up again in Big Finish a few times and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, I do genuinely feel as though I'm still waiting for a lot of Trial of a Time Lord to be properly finished, because it doesn't feel like it is here, and I think it's because the production was such a mess at this stage. So that was my as charitable as possible take on it. Over to you, Greg.
Yeah, you're right. It does leave you wanting more, like more answers, more resolutions to plot questions that were never resolved at all, more character development, more good scripts. But unfortunately, you don't get those things. This is a stretch of 10 straight episodes of Doctor Who, and 9 of them are written by Pip and Jane Baker, and it is to me it's the worst stretch of the classic series. Like these 10 episodes. Like ugh, I do not like it at all. I you know, your theory about Eric Sayward, I don't even know if it's a theory. I mean, it's pretty well known that Sayward really held Robert Holmes in high regard, and I mean, that was the whole reason why Pip and Jane ended up writing part 14, because Sayward didn't want to continue, and so then he quit, and he was the one who had Robert Holmes's outlines for episode 14, and he took them with him and said, "Well, you're not going to, you're not going to ruin this." So yeah, I mean, I think that's actually established. So okay, so part 13 is interesting, right? I mean, you're clearly setting up a bunch of things to be resolved in the final episode. I don't know if even if Robert Holmes had written both parts entirely, I don't know that it would necessarily be completely salvageable in part 14, but I I think there's, the first part's interesting. Like, I agree with you that, like, going into the Matrix is really cool, and, this fantasy factory and Mr. Popelwick and, all these, like, grotesques that we see on screen are great. We get Glitz back, which is fun. We get the Master for no real reason, but, like, he's just kind of there happy enjoying himself, which is nice. And it's all setting up for this epic conclusion, and then what we get is just it's a car accident. It's absolutely terrible. Like, absolutely nothing makes sense. Absolutely nothing's resolved. We get huge things thrown out there, like, oh, the High Council has been dissolved and Gallifrey is in crisis. Oh, okay, what does that have to do with anything? And it doesn't have anything to do with anything, but you think it would. You find out that the Valeyard's plan was actually just that he, like, hit a bomb behind the screen in the trial room. Oh, that seems kind of small potatoes, doesn't it? I thought we were blowing up the universe or something. And yeah, I mean, the dialogue is just horrendous. You mentioned megabyte modem, and again, Mel just, like, describes her traits to the listener so that don't miss anything, I guess, because this is otherwise a really subtle script that you're going to miss things with. I, I have a hard time, like, articulating my dislike of this story. I just don't. Absolutely nothing works. It's the worst season finale. It's the worst last story for a Doctor, and I know it wasn't planned to be that, but it's not good. Like, the Colin Baker era deserves so much better than this, and to see it go out this way is just sad to me.
At least the atrocious dialogue led to a pretty damn good podcast name.
This is true.
Yes.
But apart from that, fair play. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, I think mostly this ending is, as you've both sort of said, pretty poor, but I think there were a few little good bits. Like, I like the casual way the Master reveals who the Valeyard is. Like, they could have been all ominous and big noting it and whatever, and the Master's just casually like, the Valeyard, or as I've always known him, the Doctor, and it's just like, you wouldn't expect that. It's it's just really playing against the actual reveal to have it just be so blunt and casual. And I love the Doctor's speech about how evil and corrupt Gallifrey is, and how I should have just stayed here to fight evil because you're the worst that there's ever been. I really loved that sort of scene. That was really brilliant. And another thing I liked was the bit where Glitz resists Master's hypnosis and the Master's dangling the chain in front of him, and Glitz is just looking back and forth like he's getting hypnotized, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, that necklace is pretty. I'd like that." And it's just, I like it. It's fun. But yeah, I don't like the whole the Matrix part. Like, I didn't like it in Deadly Assassin. I thought it was overrated there, and I think it's sort of just nearly as bad here. And so, and of course, yeah, a megabyte modem is really stupid, and the the reveal at the end of Perry's fate is just, it's just so silly the way that they play. I mean, like, the Inquisitor's just like, I can repay you for saving all our lives by telling you that Perry is bonking Brian Blessed. Ah, a happy ending. It's just like, what? What were you even thinking? And yeah, carrot juice, carrot juice, carrot juice is a terrible ending line, and it's a pity because they could have cut it just a little bit earlier. And I think the line where the Doctor's like, I think I might have been a bit rash turning down the presidency. That would have been a much better final line. And but they go on that 1 or 2 minutes more, and carrot juice and the Valeyard's still alive reveal is, yeah, it's quite a letdown. Like, it's not completely terrible or anything, and like I did say all those good points, but yeah, it's not that great overall. It's definitely not a really fitting ending to the era. Certainly not even close.
I think it's actually quite difficult to sort of figure out how much this is a victim of all the production issues that were going on, and how much it's a victim of the fact that it's just unsalvageable. I suspect it's somewhere in the region of half and half, but then again, we wouldn't have had such a bad script had the production issues not happened. So it's hard to say. Yeah, I've nothing to add really. I enjoy it as a mindless watch. I think it's actually very interesting in terms of the lore of Doctor Who and sort of what we know about the series. It could have been a game changer if there was any level of, or any will to sort of play with the continuity here or follow it up or whatever. It could actually have been a kind of big Doctor Who game changer that we seem to be given every season finale in New Who. In terms of that, I think it's ahead of its game, but ultimately it does flop. But then again, I think the Timeless Child flops. I think the sort of the latest finale flops as well, and it's again, latest finale absolutely racked with production issues, which we're probably a long way from actually finding out what they were properly. But it unfortunately, if you're going to go big, you've got to stick the landing, and Trial absolutely fails to do that. But I think it fails to do it in a silly, fun, and at least interesting way, which it's not the way the Sixth Doctor era should end. But I think it's ultimately, it's a victim of circumstance more than anything. So yes, that was Trial of a Time Lord. It's a roller coaster. It's a silly, interesting roller coaster. So we'll actually bolt on our overall discussion about the Sixth Doctor to the start of the season 24, season by season. That feels somewhat fitting, I think, meaning that we will leave this one here. So I will say thank you and goodbye to Greg.
Thank you and goodbye, and thankfully it's over.
And I will say thank you and goodbye to Jimmy.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to the 7th Doctor's era.
I'm not entirely sure if this sounds like a threat. It's certainly not meant to, but we will be back very soon to discuss season 24. Goodbye now.